Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for today's live AMA with Stratus and Crypto.com. I'm Tina Baker-Taylor, General Manager for the UK, and I'm delighted to be your host today. Stratus is an open source proprietary blockchain which offers the latest developments in network speed and scalability. Stratus is focused on how blockchain can streamline business processes whilst reducing the complexity of blockchain adoption and implementation. To further simplify the blockchain experience, Stratus offers blockchain as a service to reduce the expense and complexity of buying and managing physical full nodes. It's my pleasure to be joined today by Trew, founder and CEO of Stratus. Hi, Chris.
Hi, Tina.
Great to have you. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
No, it's a pleasure. And we have a slightly different prize options today. So I just want to tell our audience that we will have the usual prizes for individuals who submitted their questions that Chris has chosen to answer today in our AMA. But additionally, we have another $1,000 value prize pool in STRAX. And if you submit your referral code in the chat, then you will have a chance to win $100 worth of STRAX after today's AMA. So thanks for the additional prize money, Chris.
No problem.
Awesome. All right. So before we get into our AMA questions today from the STRAX and Crypto.com community, let's talk a little bit about yourself and Stratus. So can you just provide us with a little bit more information about you, why you founded the company, and what Stratus is all about?
Yeah, no problem. So I've worked in IT for 10 years before I started Stratis, and I feel that that gave me the base that was required to go off and build this platform that's targeting the enterprises, coming from an enterprise background. The company was conceptualized in late 2015, and we launched the project in 2016. Our version 1 came out in 2017, and ever since then, we've just been building. But the real vision behind Stratus was, while working in enterprise IT, I stumbled upon blockchain and cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin, and very quickly could see that this was going to change the world. But at that time, we had a big divide between sort of enterprise environments and the blockchain, and we wanted to fill that void.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about the specific problems that you're solving and what solutions you're providing for them. So when we're talking about enterprise blockchain, maybe give us a little bit of a flavor of who your potential customers are and what problems you're solving for them.
Yeah, so very good question. So one of the main sort of problems that we're solving is in blockchain in terms of smart contracts. We have these platforms that have these new smart contract languages. Our whole platform is developed in Microsoft's .NET framework and C#. So pretty much all enterprise organizations, all large financial services businesses have some type of C# resources internally, whether that's their developers or their support guys, their actual IT guys on the ground that know the .NET framework and the applications that run on top of it. So we're actually reducing the learning curve for developers, C# developers, to actually make that move over to blockchain. Also, in our development, we deeply integrate with Microsoft Azure and various other sort of enterprise solutions that these companies use. So our platform can very easily come in and actually streamline and work in parallel sometimes with your existing systems.
Brilliant. Okay. And what about your potential customers? So, who are these enterprises and what markets are you targeting specifically?
So having a platform of our type, we're very clear that the blockchain is going to disrupt pretty much every industry out there. But if we targeted every industry out there, we'd spread ourselves too thin,
right.
And we wouldn't be a master of any single industry or single product. So from the very early stages, we looked to all of the different industries and the use cases within those industries, and we tried to identify what we consider to be the low-hanging fruit. Those low-hanging fruit use cases are the ones that we can come in and in a very short amount of time actually demonstrate the benefits that the blockchain is going to bring, whether that's a reduction in cost, a reduction in time to complete processes. And off the back of that, we chose 4 specific industries to go into, and that's IoT, gaming, supply chain, and asset management.
Fantastic. Okay, so what makes the Stratus project different from other projects? There are other enterprise players that have been around about the same time as you, and they might be targeting other types of enterprises like banks, for example, but supply chain finance could potentially fall into the financial services arena. So what differentiates Stratus from other enterprise projects?
I mean, there's a number of things. As I touched on previously, our use of Microsoft C# and .NET, that's definitely one of our unique positions within the marketplace. Another point as well that I would touch on is decentralization. What we've seen over the last few years is a lot of organizations, specifically large enterprises and financial services, can see the innovation behind the likes of Bitcoin, but they might not necessarily want to use Bitcoin, the cryptocurrency. So they want to use the underlying technology, which is blockchain. But some of these use cases have gone down the road of using a private blockchain or a DLT type solution. And what's actually happened is they've actually removed all of the benefits that the blockchain brings. If you have a single organization running a few nodes, you're trusting that organization. The whole ethos of blockchain is that it's decentralized and it's immutable. In some of these DLT environments, it's just not there. So we've tried to build out a solution that retains the decentralization and gives you those benefits that the blockchain brings, but also has some of the more DLT-centric solutions built out on top of it. And certainly we expect that in the next couple of years, we're going to see a huge shift from these private DLT environments over to the more decentralized platforms. And I think that that is one thing that definitely sets us aside. And another thing as well is that in the blockchain space, we have some of the most amazing developers out there. But some of these developers have actually never worked in an enterprise environment. And we try to hire our developers that have an enterprise background. All of the executive team at Stratus, including myself, the majority of our developers all come from a financial services or an enterprise background. So when we go into these meetings with these companies, they can see that we understand their business and we understand their internal IT function, which is very important.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with you. I myself came from an enterprise background too. And I think one of the things that's been exciting to see is this shift from these, completely walled gardens. Then, a little bit of a compromise was made into kind of, consortium blockchains. And now it does seem like these larger enterprises are starting to identify that, hybrid versions maybe of a permissionless blockchain, public v private, or some kind of complementary version of both seems to be the way that we're moving forward. And I think that's probably helped by some of the interoperability issues that have been addressed. How has Stratus kind of taken the view around ensuring that, and if an enterprise is working with Stratus, that it's not boxing them into a corner where they can't continue to kind of evolve on their blockchain strategy?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And I believe that interoperability is going to be one of the main hurdles that we have to overcome to see real adoption of blockchain within the enterprise world. But if we take the example of a supply chain solution, in the future, you may have a supply chain and part of the supply chain sits on a Hyperledger Fabric solution, part of it sits on an Ethereum-based solution, and part of it sits on a Stratis-based solution. In that situation, you lose that end-to-end visibility, the main benefit that the blockchain brings to the supply chain world. So we're going to have interoperability where you're able to track the item through these different blockchain-based solutions. And we were lucky that we saw this problem very early on, and we actually developed a solution called Interflux, which the first blockchain that we integrated was actually Hyperledger. because of the whole around the supply chain, and we do work in supply chain. We've recently integrated Ethereum also, and we'll be rolling out more blockchains as we move forward. We've developed an interface that allows us to very, very easily interface with any sort of Ethereum EVM based blockchain. So we're going to be rolling out a lot of those very, very quickly. But I completely agree. Interoperability is a big hurdle that we have to overcome.
Awesome. So let's talk a little bit about the Stratus blockchain itself. What consensus algorithm are you employing with Stratus?
Yeah, so we actually use two. So we have the Stratis or STRAX main chain, and that uses proof of stake. And then we have our smart contract side chain, which uses proof of authority. And we have the sidechain solution for security, scalability. So these smart contract executions and all of these tokens that are being created don't actually affect that STRAX main chain, and it allows it to remain very fast and streamlined.
Awesome. Okay, so we've talked a little bit about smart contracts. How does Stratus plan to compete against some of the maybe more well-known smart contract development platforms? What's your kind of differentiator there?
Yeah, so one of our main differences in our smart contracts is if we look at the smart contract platforms out there, I would say a large number of them are based on Ethereum. They're based on the EVM, where they have a virtual machine where their smart contracts are executed. We took a radically different approach in. We don't actually have a smart contract VM. We execute our smart contracts using the .NET CLR, which executes all C code out there. So we're using that familiar, tried and tested environment to execute our smart contracts. Also, not to go on about it too much, but the C# and .NET definitely differentiates us from pretty much all other platforms out there. I mean, there are a few platforms that allow you to write smart contracts in C#, but what actually happens is before that smart contract's executed, the C# is actually converted into another language, which is fine. But when you come up against problems as a developer, you have to ascertain whether it's your C# code, the conversion process, or the execution process as to where the problem actually lies. Whereas when we take our C# code and execute it in the same way as every single .NET application that's out there in the world, that really simplifies the process of troubleshooting anything for the end developer. And then finally, one of our sort of main differences in our smart contracts is we have decentralized smart contract governance. So Ethereum and all of the Ethereum-based smart contract platforms, you could write a smart contract, deploy that smart contract, and start executing it and using it. However, with our decentralized smart contract governance, there's actually an audit process that you have to go through in order for your smart contract to be executable. So you would create a PR on GitHub. Specific Stratus expert smart contract developers would audit your code. Also, community-based developers would audit your code. And once you get a sufficient number of audits, you can then put your smart contract in for a vote, and the masternodes will actually go and check, do you have sufficient audits? Is everybody happy with it? If they are, then they'll vote yes. And once you get consensus, 51%, your smart contract will be accepted into the network. And we feel that this is going to be key in the future, as we've seen in recent weeks with the problems around smart contract bugs and various other problems. We hope that these will actually be captured on our platform during this sort of mandatory audit process. And it's funny because I read a post last week that was talking about exactly this, and it sort of validated all of our thinking, which was nice.
Yeah, that is nice. Okay, so we have a number of questions around kind of development and product. So one of our community members has asked, what advantages other than more decentralization do you see in pooled masternodes? And could the original MN owners become discouraged as their profitability decreases over time?
So one of the main benefits it is going to bring is reducing the barrier to entry for masternodes. Right now, you're required to hold 100,000 STRAX tokens in order to operate a masternode. The masternodes are the nodes that sit on our smart contract sidechain and actually execute the smart contracts. By having pooled masternodes, we can reduce that sort of entry barrier down to potentially 100 STRAX. So it allows more participation. It does increase the decentralization because we're going to have many more masternodes and many more people participating. But for me personally, it's the participation. I don't like that we have this huge sort of requirement in order for you to run a masternode. And if I had my own way, anybody would be able to run a masternode. But like the end of the question said, will we see masternode owners become disgruntled? Because obviously the more masternodes that come online, their rewards are reduced. But what I would say to that is that in the coming months and coming years, we're going to see the adoption of our platform increase exponentially, which is going to bring transactions. So as those masternode rewards do decrease, we expect to see the transaction fees increase. So it should offset.
Okay, so you raised gaining adoption, and we've had questions on that. So, how are you working toward Stratus gaining greater adoption? What are some of the initiatives that you have in place?
Yeah, so we've got many initiatives, but I'll just pick a few. So one is we work very closely with an organization called C# Corner. They are the largest C# development community in the world. They may actually be the largest development community in the world. They have more than 3 million active users per month that are all developers, and we work very closely with them. We're building out a certification for Stratus, so you can actually become a Stratus certified developer. Again, going back to the enterprise world of your Citrix, your VMware, we're looking at the big players and seeing what they do, and certifications are definitely a big part of that. Also, we try to, when we're building out our products and looking at what industries we're going to go into, we try to find ones that we don't have much competition. Gaming would be a good one. We've just released our Unity Gaming Sdk. Unity is a games development framework that has a 50% share of the market across all devices, whether that's consoles, mobile devices, and PC. So they have a 50% share of the market. We've just released an SDK that allows you to integrate our blockchain technology, write your C# smart contracts, and use them within your game. In terms of Unity, we don't really have any competition. We are the only player. We are the only ones actually offering an up-to-date, fully working Unity SDK. And those are the ones we try to typically go into where we're not going to have much competition, and that should increase the adoption.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about your current development efforts. What is in the cards? What are you currently working on around market expansion, extending applications, and making these things commercially available? So a little bit, not necessarily the roadmap question, but what's currently being evolved today?
So we're always working on our core platform. That takes up quite a large share of our resources. But as I said before, we're working on various different products for these very specific industries. We are currently working on an IoT client to connect into our blockchain platform. So that's an ultralight client that is still trustless, but doesn't have the same resource requirements of, say, running one of our full nodes. But we have various different streams of development that we work on. We try not to take on any new products or any new development because there's just so much to do. So we try to remain laser focused. I think that's a big part of blockchain. Is it's very easy to, in 2017 jump on the ICO hype, and then 2020 jump on the STO hype, and then in 2021 jump on the NFT hype. We have to really be focused and focus on what it is that we're actually trying to develop. I mean, our community would have us changing what we're developing on very regularly with all of these new waves that come along, but it's up to us to sort of have the vision to really stay focused.
Yeah. So what would you say is the achievement, or, in terms of development, the thing that you're most proud of to date?
I'd have to say developing everything we've developed with $600,000. I mean, if you look at some of the other projects and platforms out there, they raised tens of millions up to hundreds of millions, and
Yeah.
we've effectively been able to do exactly the same with $600,000. And how we was able to achieve that was by focusing on technology and innovation. While some of our competitors and other platforms out there may have spent multi-millions per year on marketing and PR, and may have made their platform and everything look very sexy, we focused on the technology and the innovation. And for a long time, Stratus may not have been on people's radar because of this, but certainly now, when the time that we're at, people are more looking at fundamentals and what has a project actually delivered and the technology. And we're very confident that when we go into these enterprise organizations and these financial services, and we actually get to talk to the tech guys and the developers, when they look at our code and they look at our platform, they're always very, very impressed. And I feel that that's probably one of our biggest achievements.
That's awesome. So one of the things I'm really curious about, because it's, personally one of my kind of passion subjects, can you tell us a little bit about the Stratus Identity app?
Yeah. So it's a self-sovereign blockchain-based identity app. We use familiar protocols like OpenID and OAuth so that people can very easily integrate Stratus Identity into their environments, into their applications. The reason why we actually decided to develop the identity solution was because when we looked at use cases, pretty much 8 out of 10 require some form of identity or authorization. We thought that we need a robust identity solution. Again, not to keep talking about it, but going back to the enterprise, it's key to meet some of these enterprise use cases that we do. We're also working within the asset management space, looking at compliancy and onboarding. It's something that costs the asset management world hundreds of millions per year, and we can streamline that whole process. We have on-chain claims for all of the different metrics, whether it be KYC, have they signed the fund agreement, and then we can have a smart contract in the background autonomously checking that all of those various compliance points have been met, rather than having a room full up with people that have to manually check them. And I mean, that might sound quite scary to somebody who works in compliance, but we're in the business of saving companies money.
Yeah, indeed. So one of the questions that's come from the community is about how do you grow the Stratus community outside of English-speaking countries? So do you have local communities that help to understand the project better and get people involved? I know you're based in the UK, so it's an English-speaking company. How do you plan to, or how are you working to increase adoption and engagement in non-English speaking countries?
Yeah, so we're very fortunate, and we've actually built a very large community of non-English speakers just organically. But in terms of how we're going to increase it, I mean, working with organizations like C# Corner that are a large share of their user base is based out of India, which has one of the largest C# development communities in the world in India. Working with those local people that are on the ground, that speak the language, that work closely with these guys, most certainly. But also we go towards the back end of the year, we're going to be releasing a new program, which is, we hope, is going to accelerate exactly that, where we have effectively Stratus champions, local champions that will organize meetups, go and speak at those meetups, perhaps have some giveaway to accelerate that participation. But it's certainly something that we care about very much.
Awesome. Okay, we have some questions from token holders. So do token holders have the right to participate in the governance of the project? We talked a little bit about masternodes, but maybe you can break this down at a token level. And what kind of decisions can they vote on?
Yeah, very good question. So Basically everything. We won't make any large protocol changes without first having an on-chain vote. So if we go back to the end of last year, we actually migrated from the legacy Strat token to the new STRAX token. This allowed us to roll out around 10 optimizations that would have typically taken a very long time and required hard forks. We didn't just make that decision on our own. We actually had an on-chain vote and achieved a yes vote, and that's why we decided to go ahead with it. Also, I touched on previously our smart contract governance. Smart contracts can't be executed on the Stratus platform unless the holders, the masternodes, actually agree to it, which is a big one within the space. We certainly feel. Lastly, is we have our Stratus Decentralized Accelerator. It's basically a pool of funds that sits in a smart contract, and anybody can make a proposal to the SDA, and the masternode, the holders, actually vote on if that proposal to be successful and if they want them to receive the funds. And this is going to increase the adoption and usage of the platform as we're seeing already. So many things that the token holders can vote on, and we see them as an integral part of Stratus, because without them we wouldn't be here. So
yeah, indeed. So you mentioned that the initial token was STRAX, you migrated to STRAX. So for those token holders and people that are already kind of invested in the project's success today, what can they expect with regard to STRAX specifically in the upcoming months?
Yeah, so it's been a long road getting here. We've been working on this since 2016. So we're considered one of the old boys within the blockchain and crypto space, been around for that long. We've made a very, very long investment in time into developing this platform, and we're now sort of at the middle of last year got to a point where our platform's production ready. It's out there, it's running in the wild. Now we can start to focus on some of the more auxiliary things like products, building out products on top of the actual platform, and that's literally what we're doing. So within the coming months, we're going to be rolling out an IoT client, a new version of our Unity client, which have huge applicability. We're not just talking about a single use case that may have 100 businesses within the UK that could actually use it. We're talking about frameworks and components that have millions and millions of users that we're tapping into, and we're hoping that that's going to, certainly from the interest we've seen from releasing our Unity SDK, we've got a lot of great feedback from organizations, not only gaming organizations and game development, but actual businesses that use Unity for business type applications.
Brilliant. One of the questions that's come in, and I think you touched on part of this, but I'm just going to ask maybe if you could dig into it a little bit more. Smart contracts and their vulnerability. So the question is, how efficient and secure are your smart contracts? And have you ever had an external audit?
So we're currently working with an organization called Certic. They're one of the smart contract auditing companies out there. We previously got them to audit some of our internal smart contracts, but like I said, because we've gone a radically different way to the EVM, at first they were like, we can't really audit those smart contracts because we don't understand it at this time, but we're working with them to bring them up to speed, and they're now there and are going to be doing an audit of any smart contracts that come out directly from Stratis, the organization. But we can go back to the decentralized smart contract governance. In any smart contract that actually is executed on the Stratus platform has gone through that audit process, so it can give everyone some level of assurance that some great minds have looked at these smart contracts, and it's not just a guy sat at home in his bedroom who's developed a smart contract and deployed it, and now there's 20 million sat in the smart contract, you know. And as well, there are cons to the decentralized smart contract governance. I mean, in terms of Ethereum and EVM based smart contract platforms, you can develop your smart contract and deploy and start using it tomorrow. There is a process that you have to go through with our smart contract governance, but we feel that it's acceptable in order to secure our user base.
Brilliant. Okay, thanks for that. A slight shift, DeFi. So, we've kind of established that you guys are laser focused on those key areas, and those key verticals that you're working on. But it does sound like the level of decentralization that is available within the Stratus blockchain does lend itself to some DeFi application. So, looking ahead, what are some of the problems that you think that Stratus would be able to address within the DeFi space?
Yeah, I feel like a bit of a parrot. I keep repeating myself, but definitely smart contract governance is going to
Yeah.
be key in DeFi. If we look at the hurdles that DeFi has to overcome in order to receive mass adoption, we're going to have to stop seeing these security bugs and rug pulls, because
Yeah.
it ruins the credibility of DeFi, and that's
Mm.
actually going to stop people from your sort of average Joe from getting involved. So we feel that the audit and the governance around those smart contracts is going to be very important. But one of the other things is obviously the C# and .NET element to it, that the 20 million odd C# developers that are out there in the world could effectively, within a short amount of time, learn our smart contracts and start developing the next sort of DeFi protocol. But in terms of actual DeFi applications, we don't actually focus on any DeFi applications ourselves. That's why we have the Stratis Decentralized Accelerator, because that will fund those with great ideas of DeFi applications that they want to develop. And one example would be Opdex. It was the first project to be funded by the SDA, and it's an AMM style decentralized exchange that could be likened to Uniswap and those guys. It offers a 99% reduction in fees. But also what I think is important as well is there are some platforms that offer very, very low fees. But if you actually, what I would advise you to do is actually look at the number of nodes that they have.
Mm.
And then that will give you an idea around the level of decentralization. And
Hmm.
if you're wanting to use a decentralized exchange like a Uniswap, like an Opdex, it doesn't make any sense to go to a platform that isn't as decentralized to reduce your costs, because that whole benefit that you're getting from Uniswap is it's running on Ethereum, one of the most decentralized platforms, one of the most secure platforms out there. When you go to another platform that has a small number of validators, a small number of nodes, you lose that decentralization.
Hmm. Indeed. Yeah, absolutely. That's great advice. I don't know that people always stop to take a look where, doing their degenning, shall we say. but, but there is definitely implication. Um, okay, great. So we've got a couple kind of future focused questions to wrap us up. So you mentioned earlier that you've been able to, start and grow the company with, $600,000, which is incredible and admirable, no doubt. Have you raised funds other than that? And are you planning to do any future raises, and to fund what?
Yeah, so we've not raised any funds other than that. We've been very fortunate in the token price. Has always been healthy, so that's given us a very good treasury to fund the business. I say we raised $600,000, but the investment to date in the company is around about 15 million, which came from the tokens. But we will very likely at the start of next year be doing a Series A. We had various milestones we wanted to hit before we actually went ahead and did that. But other than that, we've actually received no funding at all. It's been completely self-funded by myself.
Okay, so let's put ourselves in the position of, you have done the Series A, it's gone really well, you've raised the funds. What's next for Stratus?
I'd say a global expansion. We're talking with companies throughout the world, but these are companies that have reached out to us. They've contacted us. It's not an actual sales effort from ourselves. We definitely want to go global and have various offices in the US, Australia, and various other different jurisdictions. That's going to be a big part of it. Also, we would like to build more products and more use cases, because we feel it's very important that we don't just have this amazing platform, that we actually have products on top. So if you're a business in the asset management world and you understand that the blockchain is going to disrupt your industry, but you have no idea of how you're actually going to utilize the blockchain, we can say, well, we have this investor onboarding and compliancy solution that you can take, and with a small amount of work, modify it for your purposes. It's completely open source. It's completely free to use. It's a very compelling offering, and we get a lot of great feedback around that.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, we really didn't get into the blockchain as a service kind of model. I don't know if you want to kind of just describe how that is helpful to enterprises for some of our audience members that might not necessarily understand the enterprise space, because I think that's a critical part of your value proposition and maybe where the global expansion will come into play.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Very good question. So in the enterprise world, they have different requirements. If, let's say, for instance, they're implementing a new piece of hardware, they have concerns around security, redundancy, resiliency, that sometimes are not the focus of some of these blockchain companies. So that's something that we focus on heavily. Another part of it is maintenance and support of the underlying infrastructure for these solutions. And that's where the blockchain as a service was birthed from. In, as I said before, we have a deep integration with Microsoft's Azure cloud platform. We support Docker, we support Kubernetes. We have various different approaches to how you can actually deploy the infrastructure that's going to support your blockchain application. And one of those is blockchain as a service, where you effectively just have an API that you connect into, or you can have your own Kubernetes environment where your nodes sit and there's self-healing and all of the redundancy and resiliency that they require. That's at the platform level, but then we also have blockchain as a service at the actual product level. So one of our products is a supply chain based solution. And if you imagine the supply chain, you have various different sizes of organizations throughout the supply chain. You may have your local, very small farmer all the way up to a Walmart. Now, a Walmart can host many nodes and support those nodes and host the infrastructure, no problem at all. But your local farmer is not going to be able to. And that's where the blockchain as a service offering really, really shines, in that each individual participant in that supply chain can access the blockchain, access the system, reap the benefits of the blockchain without any of those complexities around support, infrastructure, redundancy.
Fantastic. Chris, thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure speaking with you. And, it's been personally great for me to see, a London-based firm go from strength to strength over, the last couple of years, especially in the midst of, as you say, quite a lot of changes within the enterprise space, from, completely, permission DLT walled gardens to where we are today. And it sounds like it's been a really interesting ride for you.
It has, yeah. And thanks for having us. Really appreciate it.
No, it's been fantastic. So I also want to remind our community before we go that if you haven't added your referral ID to the chat, please definitely do. And you'll have a chance to win a share of the STRAX prize pool. And anyone that submitted questions, as well, as we always do, you may want a share of the STRAX prize pool. And if so, it will be deposited in your app within 30 days. So, Chris, if people want to learn more about you or STRAX, they can reach you on Twitter, I assume. What's your Twitter handle?
It's Stratus Platform.
Okay. And what if people want to talk to you specifically? Do you welcome drop-ins in your Twitter?
Yeah, most definitely. The best way to get hold of me is via Discord. If you join our Discord and just tag me in a message, I'll respond. We're very close with our community. It's one of our benefits. As I said before, we haven't spent multiple millions on marketing. And if you just look at our Twitter, we've got over 130,000 followers, completely organic. And that really comes down to the strength of our community. So we always like to give them our ear. My office, my door is always open. If anyone's got any questions or even concerns or negativity, I will always respond.
Brilliant. That's awesome. Chris, it's been a pleasure. And Crypto.com and Stratus community,